right, welcome to The Way It Should Be. I'm JD.
Hi, I'm Dean.
And today we have Connor back with us.
Hello, Connor.
Hello. Thanks for having me back on, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks for coming back on.
Yeah.
We had a good...
You're our most popular podcast.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Most popular podcast.
All right.
You're killing
I'll take it. I'll take it.
You're killing it. You should probably
That's
start your own podcast.
I know my back hurts from carrying all that
It should.
all that fame and fortune as
Yeah.
it were.
Yeah, you got dozens of people listen to it.
The masses. The
Man.
loyal followers.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was.
So we had to cut that last one short, man. We just kept on going. I mean, it wasn't even short, but we got to a point
What
we
ended
had
up
to.
being like 2 hours or something?
Yeah, it was pretty close to it. So we had said then, we're going to have you back on. We had to do it. So
Are you going to mention how many times it took you texting me to get me back
No.
on?
It's fine.
it took quite a
And
bit.
It wasn't personal.
It
It's
took
just
quite a
my
bit.
busy life.
Yeah.
The man's busy. He's got family and work. And
Well,
just
and-
like everybody.
Baseball team.
Yeah. And it's hard for us to schedule as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it's short notice.
I am glad you guys have each other, though. I
Yeah.
will say that.
Well, it's a good relationship. I'm glad he's here for me. I don't know what I would have done without him in my life.
Is he like your jock strap?
Oh,
All that support.
He's like my thong. He's
Oh.
right where he needs to be.
this is not where we're going in this podcast.
Bring it
Not-
back. Bring it back.
All right. Well, no, I really am super glad you're back on. So I guess we just jump into it. So if you didn't listen to, you should probably go back and listen to that episode. If you haven't, if you're just jumping into this one first, it's the one it's leaving a cult. Is what it's titled at. But we'll just jump into to a topic here. Was curious to know when you decided to make your exit from the church, Connor. How'd your family react to that?
So interesting. So my wife was, first of all, like it was a huge, maybe a slap in the face is like the best way to put it for my wife. Just because Mormonism is essentially a cult, like it actually checks more boxes on what a cult is than any other religion out there right now. So I don't hesitate myself in calling it a cult, though Mormons would get really upset if you called it a cult. Though in a way it is a compliment. Like if you're that extreme about your beliefs and you're like that diehard, in a sense, it is a compliment. So first of all, I shattered my wife, broke her poor heart, because the worst thing, like we talked about in the last episode, the worst two things you can do in the church is like first leaving the church and then second murder, which is like the taking of an innocent life.
Mm-hmm.
So leaving the church was the worst thing I could do essentially. So now I'm in outer darkness, going to hell, Mormon's definition of hell. And I think, so she wanted me to tell my family right away. So she didn't really not give me, because it was my choice to accept that. But she wanted me to tell my parents like immediately. And I don't know if she felt like that might help me get back into the church. I'm not sure what. I should probably ask her that. Or maybe that was just the way that she deals with things, because in a lot of ways, like if something changes in her life, like she wants to tell her family immediately. So it could be a mix of the two, of her trying to get me maybe to come back into the church and thinking that guilt or shame of telling my parents would convince me to come back. So I called my mom first and told her, and she started immediately asking me why. And they always tell you when you first leave the church. So when I say they, referring to people who have left the church previously, they say, don't dump all your shit on them. Like, don't overload them with all the facts and reasons you left, like word vomit. Do not do that.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I did. So my mom asked me why, and I'm like, I start laying all this stuff down, and she's like, giving me not half-ass responses, but like the church generic responses, like, well, you need to have more faith, or, maybe God did that for this reason. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit. And let me tell you why. So kept going more and more and more until she was like, I can't talk about this anymore. Like, we'll talk later. And that was it. I called my dad the next day, and I expected him to actually have a worse response than my mom. And he was just like, well, try to live a good life.
Wow.
I'll talk to you later.
Huh.
And I was like, oh. It's almost worse. Like when you expect your dad to blow up and he's like, I'm disappointed in you.
Yeah.
And that's all he says.
Yeah. That always killed me when my mom would do stuff like that. I'm just waiting for that slap across the face, and she's just like, wow, okay. And they're like, Dad, damn it.
So much worse.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, hit me or something.
Yeah. Be angry. Don't just be disappointed.
So my family, my younger brother hasn't really, he, for all like appearances sake, You know, he went to church until he graduated high school, but he was never really into it. Like he never had a testimony.
Yeah.
And my older brother, so he came home a week after going on his mission. So when you go on your mission, you serve 2 years, the white shirts, ties, name tags. So you go to what's called the Missionary Training Center, the MTC. If you're English speaking, you're in there for 3 weeks. And then if you speak a language, it's generally 3 months. And they've changed things since I've been in. Like now you'll go to the MTC for like 3 weeks in America, and then you'll go to an MTC in like Peru or Mexico, or I think Europe has one. So you're more engulfed in the culture there.
Are they trying to teach you another language too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so that's kind of, like Mormons, the gift of tongues. So, and that's we should come back to that, the whole gift of tongues.
That sounds great.
So the modern church interpretation of the gift of tongues is like, oh, well, Mormon missionaries learn the languages faster than anybody else learns languages, like societally. And a lot of that is just full immersion, like you moving to Mexico and you're just dumped there and you're like, it's sink or swim, bro.
Yeah,
like that's the human mind adapting. It's intelligence.
Yeah. That's the fastest way to learn a language.
Yeah, is the immersion. So that's kind of their interpretation of, oh, well, like, look at all these people learning languages in, 3 to 6 months and then preaching the gospel. Like that's the gift of tongues. That's God allowing them to teach that.
Okay.
So anyways, coming back, my brother was in the MTC for a week, and then he had done, so you're supposed to be like ultra pure when you go on your mission and have cleared up all your previous sins, which we talked about a little bit last time. So you go into the bishop's office and you confess certain things, which is once again, that's the disappointment. Because it's not Catholicism where you have the screen and you don't have to look at anybody. You just get to tell them.
Yeah.
But with the bishop stuff, you have to go into his office and look him in the eye and confess sexual sins or whatever it is. And then they get to ask you whatever questions they want. And that's just normal and acceptable behavior in the church. So he hadn't gotten certain sexual sins cleared up. And so when you get to the MTC,
the soaking and all that.
If you're into that sort of, he didn't go to BYU, so probably not a lot of soaking.
Okay.
He just had a lot of guilt. Because masturbation is so heavily frowned on, like it's such a negative thing in the church. Like old school Baptists. I don't think modern Baptists are like that, but Baptists, I believe, were just heavily against anything sexual. Like you couldn't even dance back in the day.
Yeah, there was a lot. Yeah,
is that where the dancing thing came from?
I believe so. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know.
I never understood why they weren't allowed to dance. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I know
It was
at one
a sexual
point.
thing.
Yeah, it was
too much hips, bro.
I gotcha.
Too much hips.
Yeah.
It's because vertical dancing leads to horizontal dancing.
It does.
As it were.
It does if you do it right.
Yeah, it better. I mean, what's the point?
There's a reason why I never learned to dance. I mean, that's not a good. I should have learned to dance. Probably would have helped me out.
You'd have kids if you would learn to dance, bro. You would,
I'd have many children right now. I do. Here, I got a question for you though, and this is a personal one, so don't answer it if you don't want to. Okay. But I think it helps to illustrate the gravity of when you're leaving an organization like this, because I went through this just, the way you
did. Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah.
So it's not a minor decision. It's not like walking away from the Baptist church and going, I'm going to go to the Methodist church across the road.
Which remind me, we'll come back to this because people say it's the easier route to leave. So you're taking notes, JD. So not the easier route, but same thing.
Yeah.
Go back. Sorry.
So you were I assume you were going through this whole thing privately before you went to your wife.
Months.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the calculations going through your head was probably, I'm just guessing, what is this going to do to my marriage when I tell her?
Yeah.
Is that true?
Very much. So my wife and I, a lot of emotional discussions. There were a lot of tears. She's a lot more emotional than I am. Like I probably cry like twice a year type of a thing, which is, a lot for like a manly dude, whatever.
Sure,
but a lot of very emotional discussions. And I told her point blank, I said, look, the way that the church views me, and I said, you're better off in the church's eyes divorcing me. Yeah. Like spiritually, the way the church sets it up, you're better off not being married to me. Mm-hmm. Now, like psychologically for her and for the kids, for their development, for everything else, not better to leave me. But the church's view is because it is like a cult, she would be better off divorcing me. And so like, I absolutely told her, I said, I said, knowing, understanding the church, if you want a divorce, that's fine. And I said, if you want to move back to Utah to be with your family to support you, because in Texas, you can only move like one county over if you get divorced. I said, I'll sign off and you can move back to Utah. Because like I was willing to do that for her because my decision wasn't fair to her. Like when we entered the agreement of marriage, it was under the terms of we're both members. We both believe in this. This is what we're going to do. This is who we are.
Yeah.
Both of us were, the term I used last time was born under the covenant. We're both born into the church. Excuse me. So leaving, I gave her the out. Like, if you want to divorce me, if you want to take time to think about it, if you want to move back to Utah, you know, like, I don't agree with it. I don't like it, but I will do it, like, or allow you to do it, whatever.
That's an important thing, because leaving these organizations, it's really emotional. It takes out a lot. And like you said, it carries some really severe consequences.
Yes.
Your wife could have said, yeah, I'm leaving. I'm going to take the kids with me.
And the church's view, like, that would have been totally acceptable.
Yeah. And that's rough. That's rough.
So that was a really hard patch for a couple of weeks. And then she was also worried that, because I told her I'd still support her in the church. Like, I would go to church every 3 or 4 weeks with her. Mm-hmm. Like, probably just sit in the car during the second hour. But during sacrament, I'll come in and I'll support you and the kids. I'll go with you every couple of weeks. You know, support the team. Hoorah, rah, I'm your cheerleader. Yeah. Because I had changed the terms of the agreement. So I felt like ethically I should step up and do that. I don't believe in it anymore. I made that clear. I said, but I'm not going to ask you to leave because that's your decision.
Yeah.
I said, I would like you to look at some of these things and make a decision. Like, what's the term they use? Informed consent. Because when you join Mormon, so you're baptized at 8 years old, and that's like when you officially become a member. Is it
really?
8? Yeah. Because that's the age of accountability according to the church. That's when you know right from wrong.
Okay.
Even though, like, the human mind isn't developed until you're like 19 or 20.
A dude is 25, I think.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
So really, that should be the age of accountability in a sense. But because Mormons, like when they're baptized at 8, or even people that join the church now, they were converted by the missionaries, like their neighbor friends, like, they're not given the full picture of, like, you know, here's what Joseph Smith actually did. Like, he was a treasure digger who, at least in 3 recorded instances, sacrificed animals, like the blood spilled on the ground, so that they could find this treasure, because, you know, the treasure was protected by the spirits and it required a blood sacrifice. And there's 3 instances where he did that. But, you know, they paint Joseph Smith as like this perfect individual, essentially, like second only to Jesus Christ. So you don't get the whole history of polygamy, and that Joseph was sealed to like 5 or 6 or 7 women who were already married. You know, like all of these there. So there's no informed consent in the church, essentially.
Sure.
So I told her, like, I would like you to look at this stuff so that you can decide for yourself if you want to stay in this religion, since you never really made a conscious decision to stay in. You were just brought up in it.
So your dad and your parents now, if you want, like I said, anything that we ask, if you don't want to, is that relationship strained, or is there is it a relationship at all, or is it?
No, we do. I don't talk to my dad as much as I used to. Like, I probably still talk to him 2 or 3 times a week on the phone, because they live in Utah. Like, they're not here locally. But I mean, even if he did live here locally, I'd probably still talk to him on the phone about the same amount. But it's weird, man. Like, sometimes we'll have normal conversations, and then, but man, there was months where I would call him and it would be fine for like 3 minutes, and then he'd be like, well, I better let you go. And it's like, you're not doing anything, and neither am I. Like, he would never do that before. And my mom too, she's not as much like that, but she'll be like, well, I better get back to whatever I was doing, and not really giving me a valid reason to get off the phone. So I do feel like there's some brush off there.
Yeah.
They come out and visit a few times since then, and they're normal when they're here. But on the phone, I definitely feel like there's some weirdness still.
Yeah. Yeah. My mom, when I left, I didn't talk to my mom for almost a decade.
Not your call. Not your call.
She distanced, right?
Yeah, I knew it was going to be like that.
God, that's horrible, though, dude.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough because I was real close with my mom.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I mean, I would talk to her every once in a while, you know. But for
like
the most,
very surface level, though.
Yeah, very surface level.
How's work? You doing okay?
Pretty much, yeah. And it took me. I don't know how long it took, but I was just like, you know what, this is fucking stupid. I'm not going to not talk to my mom. Yeah. I'm going to beat this bitch into submission. So
you're like, I'm not letting her get off that easy.
Yeah, so that's what I did. I just kept bothering her until now. I call her and everything seems fine. But I went through some health problems, and that really helped a lot too. So
kind of getting her to see bigger picture. Like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah, this dumbass could die, you know. So
what about? Do you have any other family that?
No, it's just my mom.
Just your mom.
Yeah. Well, that's not true. She's converted my aunt now.
Oh, okay.
Because they live together down there, so where they live. I don't want to say where, but
so to bring back what you said earlier too, and it's along these same lines. It is. I mean, it's the same thought. It's in the same vein that people don't appreciate the cost or the weight of the decision to leave the organization or the cult or whatever you want to call it. So like you understood your mom wasn't going to talk to you, whether you really appreciated, you know, like it was going to take 10 years or that you were going to have to kick that door down yourself.
I felt like I when I left, I knew she wasn't ever going to talk to me again. So I had to make that decision. It took me probably 2 years to come to this conclusion of I'm done. I don't want to do this thing anymore. And when I do, I'm going to lose my mom. I'll never talk to her again. And then all of my friends and everybody else that I've ever known,
because it's all in the church.
it's all in that church. They're all going to be gone. So when I did leave, I was kind of out there in the wind. I didn't know what to do. And I was really kind of, I feel like I was socially retarded.
How old were you? Remind me.
I was probably 23, I think, 22 or 23.
Okay.
So, yeah, I didn't know.
So that's still a pivotal age, man.
It is. And what's crazy is I didn't know how to interact with people in social settings outside of the church, because we didn't go to, when you went to a party, there was no alcohol at the party. There wasn't people acting crazy. So when I'd go to parties, I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to talk to these people.
Yeah.
And everything was just weird. It took me a long time. And I'm still a little weird. You can attest to that.
Well, no, but I mean, like, that's such a pivotal age and it's traumatizing. So, and I want people to like really appreciate the weight of his experience. Like, he's 23 years old. He walks away from everything, including all of his familial relationships, his entire social life, every belief, faith, thought structure that influenced 23 years of his life, his upbringing, his parents. Yep. And he's just turned loose in the world. Like, what the fuck do I do with my hands? Like the ultimate Ricky Bobby. Like,
yeah.
And I can appreciate, I mean, I was older, but like, I get it. Like, I feel that. I get, like, almost makes me emotional because it's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. And like you said, it kind of stunted you a little bit, which I also get because it's so narrow. Like, you think when you're in it that you have the bigger picture and nobody else has that. Like, only the members of your church or your cult or whatever have that big picture. And then all of the answers and all the beliefs you had, you realize are bullshit.
Yes.
And now you're just floating. Like, what matters, what doesn't matter, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. I can talk to anybody. Like, it's the ultimate freedom, but that's horrifying.
Yeah, it is. Because it used to be, we had this saying, it was kind of unofficial, but we called anybody that wasn't in the church, we called them people of the world. They're out in the world.
Gentiles.
So you stay out of the world.
Mormons used to use that term a lot. They're Gentiles.
So you can be friendly with somebody that's out in the world, that's worldly, but you don't ever be friends with them. So when I was...
Because they're not saved or they're not believers.
Exactly.
Or whatever term. Yeah. Whatever term.
Yeah. So when I left, I was like, oh shit, now I got to talk to these motherfuckers, and they're all... I don't know what to do. So it was difficult.
So you had to restructure, I mean, even the way you viewed...
The way I looked at people,
person that you spoke with, the person at work or whatever, like, I can actually be friends with this human being now.
Yeah, where I would never have been friends with them before. I would never, like, I'd be nice to you at work, but I would never hang out with you outside of work.
So we kind of talked about this last time, but remind me, did you go from your faith to just general Christianity to then becoming like an apatheist later? Or was it immediate? Like, did you want nothing to do with any organized religion? It's all bullshit at this point.
I didn't go into any other religion because I kind of worked myself out of religion during this whole process.
Me too. Okay.
So just reading and studying everything I could about every religion that I could think of.
So as you deconstructed your own faith, you deconstructed Christianity.
Yeah, Christianity and Buddhism and Islam and everything else.
Okay. Yeah, all
of them. Yeah. Yeah. I went searching for the truth and
found there was none.
Yeah.
I laugh because it hurts. It's true.
Yeah.
All the feels, bro.
So just real quick, go back because you'd said your family, but I mean, how is your wife's family, if you feel comfortable talking about that? How do they?
So she was really worried. Mainly, she knew her brothers would be more accepting. I mean, like, they're her age. They, grew up this time and place type of a thing. Still within that Mormon bubble that is Utah, especially they grew up in a small town. I think her brother might have tried alcohol once or twice in college. I don't know if she ever got a solid answer out of him, but she thinks he might have tried alcohol.
That's so weird to say try alcohol.
Yeah. I mean, that's in the church. I mean, it was probably his same experience too, with Jehovah's Witness. Like, oh, he tried alcohol. It's like the Amish you get, that weekend pass.
Rumspringa.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there wasn't the stigma that you guys have with alcohol and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, Jehovah's Witness they drink. It's not, but they don't try to get drunk or anything. But
okay.
Yeah.
But it's not
alcohol's
totally
not
unacceptable.
No, it's not unacceptable. Smoking is. So
Smoking is.
yeah, you can be disfellowship for smoking.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of all lumped in the same with Mormonism.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Well, the way they look at it is Jesus drank wine. So if Jesus can drink wine, then why the fuck can't you drink wine?
Well, Mormons just made the argument that that's because the water wasn't very pure back then. So, you add the alcohol would kill the bacteria, essentially.
It's not totally untrue.
Not totally untrue. Not totally. A little bit of partial truth, which is pretty much everything in Mormonism is like the appearance of good. So my wife's family, she's more worried about like, I think breaking her parents' hearts type of a thing. So, we have alcohol in the house now, but when her parents came over a couple weeks ago, she asked me if I would be okay putting it all in a cooler and then putting it like on the shelf where they weren't going to like accidentally find it essentially. And so I told her, I said, I don't agree with that at all. I said, but out of respect for you and your parents, because I do like her parents, I'll do that. Because her mom made comments like, I think it was her uncle's kids, her mom's uncle's kids, something like that, or her mom's cousins, I don't know, whatever. But they were like, oh, well, she left the church, but, she's drinking now. And that's just like the way she said it was like, but she's drinking now.
Oh, like she's a drunk or something.
Like that's like the worst thing you could do. And I think that for my wife, like really hit home with her, like, oh, my parents are nowhere near ready for any of this shit. You know what I mean? For where we're at now. But her parents had been, I think they were a little iffy at first, and they came out a couple weeks later as kind of moral support for my wife. But they saw that like, oh, Connor's still a good person and he's not, like doing all these horrible things. Like, yeah, I'm not a horrible person, dude. Like I'm the same person. I just don't have the cult beliefs anymore.
Yeah.
So we talked about last time, like in some ways, and I'm not saying this like as a toot my own horn, but in a way I'm a better person than you because I'm just being a good person whereas you're being a good person so you can get rewarded in heaven.
See, and I just slid right into being a degenerate.
Just
He's not lying.
But he wasn't married. He didn't have to answer.
No,
I have
didn't have
3
to
kids and I'm married. I can't just become a full-on degenerate. I mean, I drink alcohol. Like, oh man, look out for that guy. But
There's drunkie over there.
super funny. So my parents came. Funny story. Side note, really quick. I apologize. We went to a concert with my parents. So my sister lives out here now with her husband, and my brother lives out here with his wife and their kid, their little girl. So we went to a ZZ Top concert. My sister had invited my parents to come out to go see Leonard Skinner and ZZ Top. So my parents came out, stayed with both of us, but mainly her for that part. And they, incidentally, we actually bought tickets in the same section unknowingly. So I bought tickets for my wife and my 2 boys, and I text my sister's husband, and I said, hey, dude, just so you know, ZZ Top and Leonard Skinner are coming. The tickets aren't unreasonable if you guys want to buy them. I said, probably can't get seats by us. And he's like, oh, no, we actually just bought tickets for your parents to come out and go see him with us. And I'm like, well, where are your seats at? And they were in our section, like literally like 8 rows in front of us.
Oh, wow.
So we get there, and I go and get like a margarita or something like that, like one of the canned ones. And I'm walking back to my seat, and my mom comes up and gives me a hug, and I'm holding this alcoholic beverage, right? She doesn't know that I drink yet. And she goes, oh, what is that? That looks good. And I'm like, it's alcohol. And she's like, she just kind of stared at me. She was like, what? And I'm like, yeah, it's alcohol. And she's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, whatever I want. I don't have a reason to not do it. Like, it's a freaking concert. So just, that was how my parents found out I was drinking was.
That's crazy to me to participate in the culture like that. Going and see a ZZ Top concert or Leonard Skinner or whatever. But then on the same hand, like not participating in the culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. We were the same way. We could do that. Just, you have to be careful what the media that you can consume.
Yeah. It's like my parents are okay with like classic rock, but they don't like rap because rap uses a lot of bad language or what, and it's about, gangs and violence and sex. And it's like, what do you think like almost all of classic rock is about?
It's, yeah.
Like I told my wife, I'm like, you know what the song's about? And she's like, no. And I'm like, the song's called Tush. Like the song is called Tube Snake Boogie. And then she's like, oh, but I listen to lyrics. Like I like songs for the lyrics. She likes songs for the beat.
Right.
So, cause she's like, I don't know, there's some whatever, like Kesha songs or something. And I'm like, you know what the song's about? She's like, no. And I'm like, let me explain it to you.
She's a big fan of, what is that one? WAP?
Oh, God.
My sister learned the dance for that. Funny enough,
That's my favorite song. Do you think people are going to listen to that 500 years from now, like they listen to Mozart?
I don't know. You know what's hilarious to me?
It's real art.
You know what's hilarious to me is I can't remember if it was Chris Rock or who had that comedy bit where he's like, you pretty much stay listening to the music that you were listening to, you know, in high school or whatever. He was like, so there's gonna be some old lady one day, and I think it was Chris Rock, but he's like, listening to Smack My Bitch Up, you know, 7 years old. Yeah, this is my jam. Get out the way.
True.
Yeah.
I still listen to a lot of newer rap, probably more than anything else. Like, I don't do a lot of punk rock anymore. I still listen to Blink-182 because that's what I listened to in high school.
Sure.
But yeah. So anyways, that was kind of how my family found out more about my drinking, I guess. And my wife is still kind of protecting her family in a lot of ways. But funny enough, so we went to my son's baseball game. So it was me and my son and my father-in-law in my truck. And my son goes, Dad, when am I going to get baptized?
Oh.
And I'm like, because, you know, he just turned 8 in end of September. And I'm just like, on the inside, I'm dying and I'm laughing at the same time because, like, my father-in-law is sitting right next to me. He's been a bishop in the past, like, and I'm like, oh, I don't know, buddy. We'll have to talk about it and see. My dad called and asked me, he's like, well, you know, is Owen still going to get baptized? And I was like, I don't know. We're still talking about it. But if it's up to me, like, no. Yeah. Fuck no.
That's interesting.
Because I don't want him Owen can believe what he wants to believe, and he can make those decisions for himself. And, like, obviously, as a parent, you know, your own decisions and actions influence your kid. Mm-hmm. But I want him to know, like, dude, if you want to go to General Christianity Church or any church you want, like, ultimately, that's your decision. If you ask me, I'm going to give you my answers why I think religion's nonsense.
Right.
But I want him to make those decisions.
So were any of your families like, they shouldn't have moved out? They shouldn't have moved to Texas. If they'd have stayed in Utah, everything would have been all right.
You know, I think in a way, I bet both of my families, both sides probably think that. Probably more my wife's family than my own. But you always like, and this is what they tell people when you leave the church, like, somebody you know will leave the church because they asked you questions later on, and you will get the blame from that entire family. So he's my former brother-in-law because my sister and him had already gotten divorced, but I kind of talked about in the last episode, you know, he had left the church, and I was like, oh, I can convince this guy to come back in because I had spent my mission Bible bashing in Southern California. Like, I can convince this guy to come back, and realized there was so much more to the church history than I thought there was. And then that ended up leading to me the months of, you know, me thinking about it constantly and doing my research and finally deciding to leave. Oh. But my wife blamed and blames him still. And I'm sure my family does too. So
how long did it take for your wife to come around to this? Does she really leave the church, or is she just kind of going along with you?
I don't know. I've asked her that, and she kind of says the same thing. Like, so a lot of women in the church have, in a way, stronger testimony than men, but more because I just feel like they just believe, like they're willing to believe it more. Like, they look up to their parents, I think, more than men look up to their parents. And maybe it's because parents have a softer hands with their daughters. I'm not really sure. Yeah. Because like I said, she's still worried about the way her family and her parents specifically view us leaving the church. So I've asked her before, I'm like, look, like, do you want to do any of this research? Like, do you want me to show you the articles? Do you want to listen to this podcast with me? Like, she'll ask me questions and I'll answer them. And she still will ask me questions and I'll answer them, or like, you know, remind me about this, tell me about this with church history stuff. So I would like to think that she's out because she understands that it's bullshit. But I think a lot of it too is because she doesn't have any support from me to go. Yeah. It's like, it'd be hard, dude. I mean, it's like being a single parent in a lot of ways.
For
like
sure,
trying to raise kids in a religion without any support from the other spouse. I mean, you might as well be in regards to that aspect, a single parent. Yeah. So I think some of it's convenience, but also, I mean, with the stuff that happened in church history, like, I haven't tried to disprove Christianity to her, but Mormonism, 100%. Yeah. I'll shut that shit down all day. Like, any question she's got, like, I can answer it and prove why it's shenanigans.
Along that same lines, I know when I was a kid, my dad never went to church with us. My mom, we went to church. My dad, he never said he wasn't a believer or anything like that. He just did not go to church. He stayed and mowed the yard. He, whatever.
His day to catch up on shit.
Right. So
Or day drinking, whatever. I don't care.
it was mowing the yard and day drinking. It was
Jesus
best
with me
of
while I
both
mow
worlds.
the yard and drink this beer. Chill out.
But there was never really even discussion.
It's
It was
his
just like
right as a man and a homeowner.
it was not even a discussion. It was like, yeah, y'all getting ready to go to church.
Yeah.
We didn't ask because it was normal. He didn't go.
But was that like when they got married? Was that the standard too, or did that
I'm
change
sure.
after they got
I'm
married?
sure.
Okay, so yeah, there's no difference. there
So
then. Okay.
yeah, I don't think it was ever like I'm not gonna go. Y'all can go. But that was my question. There was also never anything that I remember as a child. There was never anything like, her husband doesn't go.
Yeah, that's a big thing in Mormonism. Like,
Okay,
so-and-so
that was my
spouse
question.
Isn't here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're either like inactive, or I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses sounds like you guys like shit all over people when they didn't come to church regularly, like a holier than thou, dick measuring. Comparison.
not really. I wouldn't say. I mean, I'm sure there were people that would shit on people. Ours was more. I feel like we're a more compassionate group than you.
So the church puts out both. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Is you get the surface, which is everything's nice and it's kosher and we love everybody.
Uh-huh.
But then there's the doctrinal side where the scriptures are like, if you don't do this, this, and this, like there's no way in hell you're going to, the celestial kingdom.
Yeah.
Well, because you would have been doing that. Your dad didn't go,
My dad didn't go. No.
and your mom
My mom
went.
Yeah.
Okay.
My dad was not a believer, and nobody gave us any shit about it. And if you had somebody that stopped going for any length of time, you would have people come out of the woodwork, go over to their house. Okay, go over to their house and knock on their door and say, "Hey, man, what's going on? Is everything all right?"
Fellowshipping or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Mormons do that too. Like they'll, send their like home teacher or whatever. They call them home teachers. Like, so you have families. So you'll have a partner. So if you have a son that's like a priesthood age over 12, that's like your home teaching partner. And you visit like 2 to 3 families monthly. And like you go in and like you check on them basically, share a spiritual thought and just shoot the shit for a while. But a lot of times those houses, so everybody's assigned to somebody, but like people that have stronger faith or higher callings, their people will be like the one spouse isn't active or neither person in the house is active. And that's their only contact with the church is once a month when they show up for, 20, 30 minutes to ask how their life is and pretend like they care.
Okay. Yeah,
whether they
we
care or
had,
not,
we
I
had
don't
that
know,
same
but-
thing too. So
But within Mormonism, it's all about appearances, especially in like Utah and Arizona and Idaho, where the church is really big.
I didn't realize it was big in Arizona.
Yeah. So Arizona, Utah, and Idaho, when you're in high school, they call it seminary. And so like one of your class periods in those 3 states, they actually have, the church owns land right across the street and they'll build a building with like, anywhere from like 4 to 8 classrooms in it essentially. And so you go over there for like religious instruction essentially. So in those 3 states, it is during school and the church owns land. Like generally it's always right across the street where they have the seminary building. So you'll go over there for a class period.
So like an elective.
Yeah.
It's like an elective. Yeah.
that's crazy.
So so the kids that don't do that in like Utah and stuff, like you guys probably could have all graduated a semester early, like halfway through your senior year, you had enough credits to graduate.
Yeah.
In Texas and everywhere else, they go before school. So it's like, 6:30 to 7:30 in the morning and the kids have to get up and get ready and go and do that shit. So I would say at a convenience like that, I'm not the type of person that would have been, my dad would probably beat the shit out of me if I didn't get up and go. I would have had to have gone before school, but it was just convenient to go during school. And we would skip probably once or twice, or once a week or once every other week. We'd go get donuts and show up late, or we just wouldn't go at all. We'd go to a buddy's house and watch a movie. We had a block schedule, so it was an hour and a half, basically, hour and 20 minutes. So if you had, that was your second period or your third period, if you skipped, you'd have like a major extended lunch, which was pretty cool.
Cool. That's awesome. Was that all the way through high school, from
All 4
elementary
years.
all the way up?
So that's a big appearance thing as well. And I apologize, I kind of got off the rails with the appearance thing. Being a seminary graduate, like you attended like 90% of the classes. And like if you didn't attend, you had to do makeup work to like pass essentially. But that was a big thing. So each year when I was in high school, you would cover like one of the 4 major books. So like the Book of Mormon was 1 year, Doctrine and Covenants was 1 year, Old Testament 1 year, New Testament 1 year.
Okay.
So it's, within Mormonism, like you want to marry a returned missionary and a seminary graduate. Like it was just like a notch in the belt type thing. Kind of like, the church supported the scout system, the BYA, Boy Scouts of America, or BSA, Boy Scouts of America. So like on paper, I was joking around with my wife. On paper, I'm great. I'm an Eagle Scout. I'm a returned missionary. I'm a seminary graduate, just a piece of shit under the surface though. Just on paper, I look good.
Checked all those boxes.
But with Mormonism, with appearances, everybody, you wear your best clothes to church. So you're supposed to show up. And like the standard is like white shirt with a tie, tie's buttoned all the way up. It's not hanging out the back. Your collar's folded down properly. Mm-hmm. Shirt's tucked in. You've got, your slacks on with the crease and then nice church shoes. And like people that didn't wear those clothes were either too poor to wear them or they didn't take their faith seriously enough. And in those, like, especially those 3 states that I mentioned, where the church is so strong, like that is the standard, and anything less than that is essentially unacceptable. And so people act like, oh, well, you don't have to wear those things. But if you don't, everybody's looking at you like they just not give a shit. Like why are they not getting ready?
Yeah. Suit and tie for us. Yeah. Modest dress for the women. Yeah.
And so like with women at the church, like it's supposed to be like at least a knee length skirt. Like women always wear dresses to church. Has to be a dress or a skirt of some kind, And we talked about the garments last time.
Yeah.
And so, like if you go, and this is like the whole dick measuring holier than thou thing, where if you go like on an easy hike and you post pictures and like you're in a tank top and short shorts for a girl, for example, you're like, well, she could have worn garments for that. And so like, I'm better than she is because I would have worn my garments for that.
Oh, geez.
Like, maybe she won't make, like, I take my faith seriously. Like Jimmy mows his lawn without his shirt, his shirt and his garment top on. Like, how can you do that? You're not supposed to do that. Like, why don't you take your religion and your faith seriously?
I will never understand the garment thing. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. And the justification's weird. I think it's just it's an outward but inward expression.
How do they come up with this idea for it though?
I should look into that. I'm not 100% sure. That's a good question.
Yeah.
We'll have to come back. We'll have to do a 3rd episode.
Yeah, sure. So you said something a minute ago that just made me, you said you had told your wife that if you would support her and you said you sit in the car in the second hour. What does that mean?
So church, when I was growing up, was 3 hours long. Every Sunday, 3 hours long. Yeah. So you'd have the sacrament meeting where you take the sacrament and you'd have like assigned speakers, stuff like that. And then once a month they do fast and testimony meeting.
When you say the sacrament, you talking like in a Catholic church? Okay.
So they have the deacons.
Like communion? Is that what you're...
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah,
like
okay.
communion.
That's what I was wondering.
So they bring bread.
But no wine,
just white
right?
bread. No, water.
Oh.
Because it's, we don't drink alcohol.
But Jesus was drinking alcohol.
Jesus
he said this wine
He had to avoid bacteria because it wasn't safe to drink.
That's why it doesn't make any fucking sense. Because he even said this wine represents my blood that I pour out for you. So.
And the crazy thing is the early church, like Joseph Smith's time, they would drink wine, but we don't now.
Somebody sold their stock and all the alcohol. Like,
no, the church still has theirs. Yeah. We don't know all their whole portfolio is it's all a secret. So bread and water. And then the deacons, like the 12 and 13-year-olds, that's kind of like their first experience with the priesthood. So they're given the Aaronic priesthood, which is the lesser priesthood, lesser in quotations. You can only perform certain duties, but it's just kind of raising them up in the tent of Mormonism. So they pass it out row by row. Everybody takes the bread, and then they go back up and
they're called deacons.
Yes.
Oh, so wow. That's
deacons is 12 and 13. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's just deacons in a Baptist church would have been the elder men.
Okay.
Yeah.
The deacons, the deacons basically run the church and they hire the pastor, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think part of the title of deacons too is to impress upon the youth of like the importance of you getting the priesthood and you having certain responsibilities with that now. So there's deacons are 12 and 13, teachers are 14 and 15, and then priests are 16, 17, 18 essentially. And then when you go on your mission,
these are some exalted titles for some young kids.
But it's part of the cult thing too.
Sure,
you have these responsibilities, and like that's why you can't masturbate or think impure thoughts because the spirit will leave and you're not worthy of your priesthood anymore. It's about control.
Yeah.
If they control your thoughts, they control your actions, they control everything. And your parents and your leaders can use it to shame you and to keep you controlled.
Right.
The guilt trip's very easy.
Oh, for
especially at
sure.
that
Yeah,
age.
I know all about it. Yeah.
So just so we get so second hour because now we've
Yeah,
done the,
coming back. I apologize. So
No, that's fine.
You do the sacrament. And that usually takes like 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how full the chapel is in the cultural hall. So they bless. They do a specific word for word prayer for the sacrament. It has to be word for word. If they mess up, so the 16 and 17-year-olds are the ones that bless the bread. Okay. And older people can do it if they don't have them, but like that's part of their responsibility, right? Like you grow into certain responsibilities. So they have to say it word for word. And when they're done with the prayer, they have to look over at the bishop. So there has to be 2, usually 3. The one in the middle kneels down. There's a little microphone in the drawer thing they pull out. You pull it out, light comes on, so it's good. You say the prayer, which is on that board. So you read it word for word. And then you have to look over at the bishop, and he'll either nod or he'll shake his head. If he shakes his head, you have to go again. You mess up one word, got to go again. And then they do the same thing with the water. Look over at the bishop, gives you the nod. Okay. And like sometimes it takes these guys like 3 or 4 tries because they're young. And if you mess up once, you're super stressed out. You start sweating there and stuttering. And if you stutter, that doesn't count and you got to go again.
Yeah.
And then they'll have generally a youth speaker and then 2 adult speakers. And that's the sacrament. A couple songs mixed in there. Second hour, when I was growing up, when it was 3 hours, second hour, you would be combined with other people your age. So, and then like husbands and wives go to a class together. And then, the 12 and 13-year-old young men and young women go to a class together. 13 and 14-year-old young men and young women go to a class, 16, 17, et cetera. There's primary for the kids that are, I think, 5 and up, and then under 5, but over 1 are in nursery. All of these people are not paid, right? Mm-hmm. So they're called by God, essentially, to do this calling. So nobody's paid.
Right.
They don't do background checks. The church is very against background checks because it costs them money and also, would shine some light on some sketchy shit. So I think in California they have to now with all the lawsuits they had. Mormonism and other faiths had lawsuits. So now the background check is required there, but it wasn't before, and it's not in most states still.
Just for dealing with the children?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, even the youth, though, you should have a background check if you're working with anybody under 18.
For sure.
So that's the second hour. And then the third hour, it's split up like men go one group, women go another group.
Huh.
Except for the primary, they're still under 12. They're all mixed in together.
Okay.
And they have their own classes and stuff.
That's how your church is done. Your service is done on a Sunday?
Yes. That's how it was done. The 3 hours. Now it's 2 hours. And I think 1 week a month, they split up the genders. And then the other times they're combined. I'm not positive on that. I don't know. But that changed.
So it's not just
one.
It's not just a dude up there giving a sermon for an hour and a half or whatever.
And once again, because the bishop's not paid, so it's kind of nice for him. He doesn't have to prepare a sermon every Sunday.
Yeah.
But that's also nice because you can assign people to talk. So a member of the bishopric will call a ward. So generally, you speak once a year. Standard once a year.
Does the church put out study material for these classes you're going to?
Massively.
Okay.
Yeah. So depending on, and they've changed it, every 5-10 years they shake shit up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they'll come out with a lesson manual for the year and it's by week. So it'll be like, July 21st through July 28th or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And now they've correlated that to like family home evenings at home. You're supposed to be reinforcing that topic, those 2 chapters in the Bible or Book of Mormon or whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of carryover
Yeah.
with what's supposed to be happening at home, what's happening at young men's and young women's midweek, and then also what's happening on Sundays.
Okay. Yeah, that's the way
seminary,
Jay does to it too.
So very structured,
Yeah.
in that regard.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about the special prayer. What are the special prayer stuff?
So for the most part, the prayers in Mormonism are, you're just supposed to open them a certain way. Like, what's mostly socially acceptable is, like, Dear Heavenly Father, you say like, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful. You start with all the shit you're thankful for. Mm-hmm. And then you do your asks and then always close in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Yeah. Please make Becky shut the fuck up every once in a while.
So bookends, always the same. Now with the sacrament, very specific, word for word, has to be word for word. Priesthood blessings. So Mormonism, like we talked about last time, they believe in the actual physical and spiritual, I guess, restoration of the priesthood powers. The priesthood powers are or is the authority to act in the name of God. So Mormons believe they are the only ones that have the actual priesthood that Christ held, that Peter, James, and John held, that Abraham, that Noah, that Moses, Adam, whoever held. And because they're the only ones that have that priesthood, they're the only ones that can act in God's name. So if miracles happen elsewhere, that's just God's grace, essentially, and that was him being nice. But that Mormonism is the one that performs real miracles, even though they don't actually perform shit. Like, they believe that they have the power, but they don't show up at wildfires and pray the fire goes away and it just goes away.
Yeah.
Right? There'll be like a wildfire for a month in California and then it'll rain one day, or the firefighters manage to get it under control and that's attributed to God, which, I mean, that's Christianity in general, right? Like, you pray, 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 and if it happens, then it was God, and if it doesn't happen, then it wasn't God's will, and you didn't have enough faith or whatever.
It's kind of like the guy that was in a horrific car accident or something, and the surgeon's in there for 15 hours working on this guy to save his life, and oh, thank God that he's, no, motherfucker, thank the fucking surgeon that spent 15 hours putting this guy back together. That's who did it. God didn't do shit.
If anything, he allowed you to be in that car
JD.
wreck. Yeah. And, you always say, it's always the excuses. And I appreciate it to a point, but it's also frustrating being out of it. That God gets the credit for everything good, and anything negative that happens is either your own fault or it's God's will.
Yeah.
Which that just kind of makes God look like an asshole.
Yeah. Or it's Satan.
Is there?
See, Mormon didn't say that Satan did it.
Oh, okay.
They would say it was either your decision because you weren't following the doctrines enough, or because you had such strong faith, God allowed you to have that obstacle because he knew you could overcome it.
Oh, that's wild.
So someone gets in a car wreck or whatever, I don't know, kicked by a horse, and is there some kind of like go to the temple, some kind of ceremony? I don't know where I heard this.
Yeah. So the temples have like a prayer box essentially. So going back to the last one, you have to have a valid temple recommend, which means you're living a certain standard of worthiness. You've met with your bishop and your stake president. They both signed, like physically signed your temple recommend, which has a barcode on it. So when you show up at the temple, they're going to scan that barcode and make sure the signatures are on there. And it's going to come up if that's an active recommend or not.
That's wild.
So once you're in the temple,
high tech.
yeah. But I mean, it also keeps the members in check too, right? Like, so number one, it tracks who's going to the temple enough, right? Which we talk about Jehovah's Witnesses, like how many hours are you putting in, which they won't ask you in Mormonism, but they are tracking that. Right. And they track the money you donate, whether it's tithing and fast offerings or whatever. They track all of that. They also track your attendance. There's a guy called the ward clerk, and he'll get up like 20 minutes into sacrament meeting, and he'll walk around and literally count every single person that's there. And then they put it in the church thing after church. And so it's recorded as far as the numbers of people there and all that stuff. So very organized, very numbers oriented. So in the temple, there's like a prayer box essentially. So you can write the person's name on there and then put it in the box. Okay. So when you go through the endowment session in the temple, which is like explains the story of the creation and the purpose here on earth, and then you make specific covenants, which we talked about before. So up until like the mid to late 90s, you would covenant that if you divulged any of the secrets in the temple, that you would kill yourself. Also, for a very long time, you would covenant that you would help basically avenge the death of the prophets. Because Joseph Smith was quote unquote martyred. I mean, he was killed for being a pedophile and doing a lot of messed up shit. But the church views him as a martyr. And then John Taylor, he was the third prophet, and he died in exile. So Mormons refused to give up polygamy. John Taylor, when he was prophet, had a revelation that polygamy would never end, and it was up to the saints to, actually show their belief by essentially opposing the federal government, which is cool in itself, opposing the federal government, right? Not cool for polygamy and the wives and the kids that had to suffer through that. But he died essentially on the run from the federal government. Next prophet comes in. Now all of a sudden he's got a revelation that we need to move away from polygamy and leave that behind. And that's God's will. And that it was essentially like an Abrahamic test, right? Abraham had to sacrifice his son Isaac. So they call something like that an Abrahamic test, where, well, we just wanted to make sure you guys actually believed this shit. Now that you've shown that you believed it, we're going to dial it back.
That's wild.
It's bullshit though. Like as a member, when you grow up in it, you're like, oh, that's so cool that, God tested their faith and they showed that they were worthy. So then he removed that commandment to, to bless them. And it's like, okay, so was he just punishing them before, or was he blessing them by giving them multiple women to sleep with? Like, you know what I mean? I don't know. Too many questions. So anyways, back to the
Seems
temple
like
with that.
way
I'm
too
sorry.
much work.
Yes.
To
Well, it's
have-
mental gymnastics, man. Like,
No,
or do
I'm
you
talking
mean
about
polygamy?
more than one wife.
Yeah,
That's a
we
lot of
won't get
work.
into that if my wife listens to this episode. I would rather give one wife my full attention.
Absolutely.
I don't have the libido for multiple wives. I'm just going to be honest with you.
So I had a conversation one time with a guy, a Muslim guy, and he was telling me, he said something in our conversation about his heavenly wife, I think is how he said it. And I was like, well,
Don't
man,
Muslims get like 27 wives?
Well,
27 virgins?
essentially
That's
that's what
72.
that's
My
I
numbers.
think that's
Dyslexic,
that's
yeah.
if that's we probably
So they-
shouldn't.
if they
I think
blow
that's
somebody up, I
jihad.
think.
That's jihad stuff, right? So this guy says my heavenly wife, and I say like, oh, okay, you're gonna have to explain that to me because, and he says, well, the Quran says that we'll have a wife in heaven made just for us, and like
Sounds
essentially
like slavery with extra
essentially a
steps.
slave. And so I asked him, I was like, whoa, hang on, and explain this to
Sounds
me. I
like a
said,
good deal, really.
I said, you're going to explain this to me because what is your wife down here if you don't want to be reunited with her? What is, if you don't want to be reunited with her in your afterlife, was this just a waste of time? Why have devotion? That's my thought, right? Why have devotion to this one person? I mean, obviously you could love her down here and everything like that, but it just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute in my hillbilly brain. And there was really
I'm not a smart man.
yeah, there was no, and he was just like, well, that's the way it is. Like and to him, like it sounded great. It sounded great. And I just remember thinking, we do not have the same, I mean, he's a married guy. We do not have the same relationship because
You plan on being with your wife
yeah,
after this life. And he's like, I'm just replacing
absolutely.
this bitch with a new one.
He's like, I'm just going to upgrade. Yeah, I get the new model that does whatever I need it to do. And it blew my mind. So anyway, I don't know why I decided to go off on that tangent, but
Which in the temple, you can be sealed to multiple women. So the church still believes in polygamy in a spiritual or an everlasting or eternal sense. Eternal is probably the word the church would use. So like the current prophet of the church, his wife died like 15 years ago, and he got sealed in the temple to a second wife. Now, women can't be sealed to more than one man, but men can be sealed to multiple women. So polygamy is still performed on an eternal/spiritual plane by Mormons.
so if the woman's husband dies, they're both Mormon, she can't remarry another Mormon and be sealed.
So she can marry so a temple sealing is you're married for time and eternity. Okay. Now, a woman, if she's married for time and eternity to one man, so like if I died, me and my wife were still active, I died, she could not be sealed to another man without the first presidency, who was the prophet, and the first and second counselor of the church, of the entire church, signing off on it. And the argument would have to be that I wasn't active when I died, or like very extenuating circumstances. They tend to protect. Is misogynistic the right word? Like it's very
I guess so, yeah.
oriented, because God is a man, and so like everything is kind of geared towards that. So yeah, a woman, if she's sealed to her husband, the first presidency would have to approve the sealing being broken. And that's actually a big problem in the church because the church has a very high divorce rate. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean people are leaving the church with that divorce. It just has a high divorce rate. So you're sealed to your first husband. You guys got married when you were like 21 years old. It's a shit show because you're both 21 years old. You're divorced at 23. You want to remarry at 27. The church has to sign off on you being sealed to the husband you might actually spend the next 60 years with. And a lot of times it takes years for them to sign off. So a lot of people will just get married for time in quotations, right? Like a normal marriage, till death do you part. And then hopefully, eventually, the church will sign off on breaking off your previous sealing so that you can be married to your new spouse. Now,
Meanwhile, the husband
no
remarried
issues.
and was sealed again.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, he could get divorced 2 years later to that wife and get sealed to another one. And by Mormon doctrine, if she never breaks that sealing, she is essentially his in the next life.
That's fucking wild.
Now, it is wild. Now, coming back around to the special prayer.
Yeah,
I didn't forget. Sorry. So I wanted to go off on some of the temple stuff a little bit because in the temple, you would covenant to help avenge the blood of the prophets. So a lot of crazy shit is promised in there. There's a lot of things that you're not supposed to talk about. Kind of like with masonry. We talked about that last time. You're not supposed to divulge anything. With a death penalty, at least that was up until the late 90s. Now they don't make you say that anymore. So that prayer list that people put their names in the box, that's brought up. And this is what's called I think it's called the proper order of prayer or the holy order of prayer. And this freaked me out. The first time I went through the temple, they don't tell you shit because you're not supposed to talk about it outside the temple. And you're sure shit not supposed to tell anybody who hasn't been through. So I get in there, there's all this weird stuff with Adam and Eve. I have to wear this special outfit and this weird hat and this weird, everything's white. All my outfit's white, but then I have this weird green robe apron thing on, and that is symbolic of the Adam and Eve having to wear leaves or whatever to cover their nakedness because they realized they were naked after they partook of the fruit of the tree of good and evil. Anyways, so you go through all this, there's all this weird symbolism in the temple. Everything has like 2 or 3 meanings. And then they're like, oh, well, we need to have the holy order of prayer. And we're going to pray for these super select people who got their names put into this temple. So it's like this little zip folder. So they put it on there. Everybody puts like their left hand on the person next to them. And then they raise their arm to the square like this. Okay. So everybody's touching and then they're raising their hand to God. And then one dude says the prayer and he'll stop every sentence or half sentence. And everybody around him in that circle has to repeat word for word what he said. So to me, it's like cult-like chanting.
Yeah, for
and
sure.
It's still weird as shit to me. It was weird then, and it's weird now. And so that's not word for word because those prayers can change, but they're pretty much the same temple to temple. Like, you know, we pray for the prophet, we pray for the church, we pray for all of God's children that they'll find the truth, and we ask a special blessing for the names in this folder, and blah, blah, blah. So, but in the temple ceremony too, like, so you make specific promises and then word for word, you have to repeat those promises. And then you go through the veil, which I don't know if that's symbolic of masonry as well. So there's a veil, like a white sheet.
No.
So Mormonism believes like, you know, there's a veil placed over your mind when you come to this earth. So you forget about the pre-existence and being with God. Okay. So you're on this earth to be tested to see how you act when you're not in God's presence, essentially. And then when you die, the veil is removed and you see everything and you remember everything from before. You remember everything on this life. Okay. So there's a physical white sheet and it has, I think, the same shapes that the garment has on it, the compass and the square and all that. And so you reach through and you like have to put your arm on the one guy's shoulder. And then there are special grips, which I know masonry has the same grips, but they call them sacred grips in the temple. Okay. They have specific names like the sure sign of the nail and different things like that. They tie it in with Christianity and the crucifixion, essentially. And then word for word, you have to repeat these things. And then if you repeat them correctly, you are brought through the veil. And then you get to go into like this celestial room and you can hang out there all day if you want, basically, and pray and whatever. And it's gorgeous in there. A lot of really pretty woodwork, a lot of like gold leaf painting, like so actual leaf, gold, whatever painting. But like when people are, you know, deciding if they're going to get married or if they're going to get divorced or making big life decisions, they'll go through the temple and then they'll go and fast and pray in that celestial room and spend time in there.
So they're just the one, the temple in Salt Lake, or are there multiple temples?
Oh, dude, there's over 100. There might be hundreds in the world now.
Okay.
So Dallas has one.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, we did.
And
Okay,
they all carry the same weight as the one in Salt Lake. That one's not any more special than the others.
No, so I think they just got rid of it like this year or last year, maybe the year before. They would do what's called the live session. So a normal endowment session is like an hour and a half long. They have these video clips that you watch. They have like church actors go in and reenact Adam and Eve, and there's Satan there, Peter, James, and John, God the Father, his son Jesus Christ. They're all in these videos, okay? Yeah. They're really cheesy, poor production, whatever. But in the live sessions, which was Salt Lake and then Manti, which is where my wife grew up, was a small town right by Manti. They do live sessions. So they have like these old temple workers that actually like come out and act like God. Like they're saying the words that the video says. It just takes a lot longer because they're like old people. So they have like, I mean, you call them actors in quotations, but they just volunteers in the temple and they have to reenact these things. So those two temples are the only ones that are different, even though word for word it has to be the same. They just had physical actors, temple workers. So and those temples and like one other one are viewed as like the St. George one because they were built in the 1800s, like mid 1800s. So in Mormonism, there's a lot of cultural significance, especially the Salt Lake one. But for all intents and purposes, they're the same. It's the same shit, the same symbolism, the same ceremony, the same words. It's all the same.
Same street cred.
Same street cred.
So nobody's like...
in Mormonism, you get a little more cred. Like everybody wants to get married in the Salt Lake Temple.
Yeah,
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
My wife and I were sealed in Manti because that was the one she grew up by. But also that was like the first temple built in the West.
Ah, okay.
So there's some, it's just kind of a little bit of dick measuring. Right. It really doesn't matter. But like diehard Mormons, it does.
Yeah, we got married at Salt Lake. Where'd you get married?
Yeah. No, for real. There's a little bit
Dallas.
of that.
So the special prayer, back to that real fast. So that's, you go in there.
You have to go through the endowment session, and then the prayer thing is kind of at the end of that with like the chanting and the whatever.
And that could be, that is common for like, oh, we have this like really, we need a miracle kind of thing.
Yeah. Honestly, like if like your friend in the church was like, oh, so-and-so, Judy's going through a really hard time. Like I'm going to put her name in the temple and that'll really help her out. Like that's better than a normal prayer.
Okay.
Or like somebody's got cancer and it's like, oh, well, every week I'm putting your name in the temple when I go. That type of a thing. So there is some, in Mormonism, some significance to that.
So I was going to ask you to flip it up real fast. I don't know if we talked about it last time. The Jehovah's Witness participate in no holidays. Did we talk about that last time?
I don't think we did.
I don't think we did either. Take a break for a minute. Go.
So I believe the question was about Jehovah's Witnesses not celebrating religion.
Celebrating holidays. No holidays.
No holidays.
No holidays.
Oh, yeah, sorry,
period.
I said that wrong.
You did say it wrong.
Okay, I have another question, follow-up about your church buildings, but let's answer this question first. But remind me.
Okay.
You know what's coming. You're smiling. You
yeah.
know what's coming. Okay.
No, J-Dubs don't celebrate most holidays. There you go.
What ones do you celebrate? Is the 4th of July acceptable?
No.
America's birthday is not acceptable.
No.
Because it's not a Christian holiday and it detracts from God?
No, because it's a patriotic holiday.
You guys don't do patriotism?
No.
See, Mormons very patriotic. They believe that this is a holy, sacred, set-apart land for God's true children.
No.
And that the New Jerusalem will be built on this country.
Yeah, because Jesus came and preached the Indians or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, look at you.
Yeah, I'm no dummy.
Believe Adam and Eve, or the Garden of Eden,
was in Independence, Missouri.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Missouri.
You didn't think I knew that?
Very impressed. He actually did his homework.
Yeah. I remember reading that going, that is the dumbest shit I've ever heard.
I read that.
Why
back
Independence,
then,
Missouri?
And I'm like, was there just not humidity when it was the Garden of Eden? Because nobody wants to be in Missouri, bro. Harsh winters, shitty ass summers, hard.
It was different back then because it was the Garden of Eden,
So no Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving is okay.
I guess that makes sense.
That's a patriotic holiday, though, dude.
It's not a patriotic holiday.
You sure?
It's a conscience matter, according to them. Because it's not a holiday celebrating the government.
Okay.
It's not a holiday. I mean, it's not.
Wasn't it Abraham Lincoln that created Thanksgiving during the Civil War?
He formalized it, but it had been celebrated several times before.
Did he set the date, though?
Yes.
Okay. Just historical.
But it's a conscience matter if you want to celebrate or not, because it's not a religious holiday. It's not necessarily a patriotic holiday. It's a holiday to give thanks for. Oh, God damn it! It's a holiday to give thanks for the things that you are thankful for during the year, right? Your other holidays, Christmas is not celebrated because it's not a Christian holiday. It's a
pagan holiday.
It is. Yes,
Christianity took it over, but
anybody that believes that it's a Christian holiday is a moron.
But Easter is also a pagan holiday.
Yes.
So while we're on the topic of paganism.
It's Christmas is pagan. It's look it up. The Roman Saturnalia is where they got it from.
They probably just took it. They're like,
that's exactly what they did, because they didn't want the Romans to like abandon all their holidays, so they just took them. Easter is a Babylonian fertility holiday.
Yep.
Celebrating Ishtar
as well as new beginnings because it's spring.
Right. Yeah. Halloween is obvious.
Wait, come back real quick. Doesn't Easter have Norse significance as well?
It's got a lot of different stuff in it. Yeah.
Sorry, just that's general curiosity.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
But none of it is Christian. They just co-opted these religions and shoehorned them into Christianity.
Which is funny because that's like Joseph Smith did that with like everything. He's like, I just like this and I like this and I'm just going to compile it.
Yeah.
Christianity's like, hey, we're going to take your shit and make it better because we added Jesus.
Well, it's also a way to get the people that were quote unquote pagans to actually adopt a religion.
Yeah. Like, we'll allow you to keep some of your traditions. We're just going to add Jesus to it.
You got to remember, Christianity was decreed to be the religion of the empire by the Constantine. It wasn't really Constantine. It was Theodosius the First. But yeah, Constantine started it, but Theodosius the First was the one that actually said, this is the religion, so you're going to have to accept it whether you like it or not.
Okay.
So, yeah, Halloween is obvious. It's pretty demonic, but whatever.
Birthdays.
The birthdays, even when I was in, I didn't understand the birthday thing. So I really can't give you a good answer for that. They say it's because you're not supposed to celebrate yourself. You're only supposed to focus on God.
Yeah, because it's detracting from God.
Right.
Because you're celebrating when He created you, so really He should get the attention.
Yeah.
Okay.
But even when I was in, I was like, dude, this one doesn't make any sense, but whatever, I'll go with it. So.
Do you know, do Seventh-day Adventists do holidays?
I don't remember. Like I said, I never really read into them very.
I think they do.
They probably do.
Seventh Day, and they decorated for Christmas, but I always thought they didn't celebrate holidays. Let's Google it.
Yeah, I don't remember. Like I said, you would have thought that I would have read into the Seventh-day Adventists because that's where Jehovah's Witnesses came from with the Adventist movement, but I never looked into them.
Did you feel like you were missing out as a kid? Like you're going to school and everyone's doing Christmas party. How did that work?
So
as a fourth grader.
Yeah.
Back in our time, they did Christmas parties in public school.
Yeah. So in school, whenever a Christmas thing came up, we would excuse ourselves. So the classroom is having a Christmas party, and I'd have to go, well, I got to go. I can't do this. So the teacher would be like, all right, go hang out in the cafeteria or something for the class period. So while everybody else is having fun, eating cookies and shit, I'm sitting in the cafeteria like a jack-off.
See, now the interesting thing with that is like the flip side now culturally, where like before they'd shit all over you if you didn't Pledge of Allegiance, right?
Yeah.
And now they like set aside a special. You don't have to do that.
Well, that is because of Jehovah's Witnesses.
So I didn't think about that growing up. You didn't do, how does that work every day? Because we said the pledge when I was in elementary.
You'd stand up and be respectful, but you wouldn't, put your hand over your heart.
You don't want to draw attention to it.
Yeah. And then not saying the Pledge of Allegiance, that came from Supreme Court cases that Jehovah's Witnesses won in like the 30s.
Bunch of commies, dude. I actually don't believe in the Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, it was not implemented in World War II.
It was also written by a socialist, so.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, that's like real American history. We don't want to overload people with truth, dude.
Yeah, but Thanksgiving, most people celebrated Thanksgiving.
Can you guys watch sports? Like, I know it's probably a weird question.
Yeah,
but
they
like,
watch sports.
I could see Jehovah's Witnesses being like, don't watch sports because that detracts from time you could be spending.
You wouldn't stay home on Sunday to watch the Dallas Cowboys, no.
See, some Mormons, like culturally, they won't watch sports on Sunday. So like my wife's family, like they never watched the Super Bowl growing up. And that wasn't a top, like the church never said, don't do that. Kind of like caffeine, the church never said, but it was like a comment made by an apostle at some fireside that, it's a holy day. It's like a lot of Mormons only watch Disney movies, like animated ones, because like, and that's not a real reason. It's just because those are all family oriented and the family can do that together. So
I will tell you.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I will tell you there were some guys that really were into like football and stuff. So we didn't do it so much where I lived because we only had one congregation meeting at the Kingdom Hall.
Okay.
Some Kingdom Halls have multiple congregations. They never let a congregation get bigger than about 120 people.
Okay.
So once you got
similar with Mormonism.
Yeah. So once you got big enough, they would split the congregation. So
what did you guys call it? Just congregation? Like 1 and 2? Did you have like?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. So Mormons will be like Burleson Ward. They call it a ward. Joshua Ward, Burleson First Ward, Burleson Second Ward, Burleson Third Ward.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't really remember how they do it because I didn't go to one that had that.
Okay.
And
smaller.
Yeah. We just had the one. But so they would, in order to fit everybody in, they'd have different meeting times, right?
That's what. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the guys
are
are
like every hour and a half, a different one would start.
Yeah. So the guys that were super into football would just, I'm going to be going to the other congregation.
But that was allowed.
Yeah, it was cool as long as you went.
So Mormons, it's geographical area, and you're assigned a time, and then at the turn of the year, it all kind of like it shuffles. So if they have like a 9 a.m., 11 a.m., and 1 p.m., and then like the 1 p.m. is going to go to 9 a.m., and everybody gets bumped back. But you don't get to choose that shit. Like you have to go at your designated time.
Really? Yeah. No, you could pick whatever you wanted to. And a lot of times people would travel around to different congregations. So like I went to the Granbury one. Sometimes we go to the one in Benbrook or
Interesting.
not very often. Usually just kind of stayed where you were. When you lived in like a bigger
It's a convenience factor too. Like, why would you drive all the way over here when you could just go to this one?
Yeah, if you lived in like Fort Worth or whatever, there's congregations pretty close to each other. You could travel around to the different ones. But we lived so far out, it just never really happened. So we'd hang out in Stephenville a lot for some reason.
Oh, for real?
Yeah,
Well, that's a hike.
yeah.
So with Mormonism, because everybody has a calling, basically, like you're assigned something. Like you're going to be a youth teacher for the 12 and 13-year-olds. You're going to be a primary teacher for the 6-year-olds. Like you're the bishop, you're the ward clerk, you're the whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like you can't go to another one because you have an assignment in your ward.
Oh, I
and
gotcha.
if you hate your bishop, that's your problem, not the bishop's. And either the bishop was put in there, even if he's a shithead, for a specific reason, right? Because he's called by God. Like there's a reason he's there. And so you need to humble yourself, eat humble pie, eat a serving of shit, whatever term you want to use, and suck it up for the 4 to 6 years that guy's the bishop, or the dude's the stake president for 6 years and you hate him. Or you had like shitty business dealings with him and he ripped you off.
Yeah.
Well, God called him. So obviously God's forgiven him. So you need to too.
Oh, no shit.
So
yeah.
you can't just jump churches. So interesting the difference. It's just
Yeah, no,
surprising to me.
like if you just didn't like the congregation you're going to, you could be, you go to the secretary and be like, pull my card, man. I'm going to this other one. Send it over there.
Yeah, and in Mormonism, they just pull like, you don't have enough faith. Like you need to suck it up and deal with it.
Well, they would ask, what's the deal? What's going on? Whatever. I never had that issue, but I know some people did. They would just be like, no, I don't want to go here anymore. And they'd have a disagreement with somebody or whatever the reason was.
You've been out for over 20 years. I'm assuming 20 years forever.
Yeah.
Do you know if anything's changed since you've been in? Like culturally
I'm
or
sure there has.
structurally?
Yeah, there's been some structural changes, but I really couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I really couldn't tell. Like the watchtower that they put out now, they do it different. There's been some changes, but I haven't kept up with it, so I don't really know.
Okay.
So I can only really speak to the J-Dubs up to the time I left.
Okay.
So
Just
one thing
curious.
me and you had talked about is kind of back to that, leaving it and then kind of feeling lost, because like there was never, and correct me if I'm wrong when I'm saying this, there was never like, hey, you're gonna go to school to be, we talked about this before, we're gonna go to school to be a lawyer, or you're gonna go to school because like, or maybe that's wrong, a truck driver, right? Because by doing that job, you can't be here as much as you need to. Did we talk about that last time?
I don't know.
Did maybe it was not on the episode, but that you guys don't pursue money. You're not supposed to pursue money. You're supposed to pursue careers that allow you to serve God, be a better member.
Yes. Yeah. It's not encouraged. They don't tell you not to do it. If you wanted to go be a doctor, you can go be a doctor. But they encourage people to try to find trades that will allow them to maximize their time in ministry. The ministry is the biggest thing for them, is going out there knocking on doors and doing
A lot of
Bible
respect
studies.
for that.
Yeah. That's the biggest thing. So if it's detracting from your ability, it's cool. If you miss meetings, like when I was going, I don't think they do this anymore. But when I was going, you had 3, we call them going to the meetings, right? So you would have 3 meetings a week. You did, like for us, we went on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday.
Okay.
And you could miss meetings. They didn't like it, but if you're putting in the hours out in service, they would prefer that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's not a Mormon church. Like, you get your ass to church, bro. There's nothing more important than you being at that church.
So what about that? What about with Mormons? Say you have a job that requires you to work Sundays.
Oh, that would be heavily frowned upon. So I
Same
would
here,
say
yeah.
for probably a century and a half, it would be highly inappropriate for you to have a job that required you to work on Sunday, and that you really need to reconsider your career choice and your job. And it would be better for you to take less money and lose your house so that you could be at church on Sundays, fulfilling your callings, outward expressions, right? That's appearances are important.
Yeah.
Now because the church is a lot nicer now with certain things, they'd be like, oh, well, if that's what it takes to provide for your family, then it's probably okay. But if you were like a true believer, the behind the scenes thing or whatever is like, you need to get your shit together and find a different job, dude.
Yeah.
Like if you got to do it for a few months to get by, okay. But if you're picking a career that's going to be the rest of your life, that's not okay.
Yeah. For us, it'd be pretty much the same thing. You can miss maybe you don't go to the book study. That's okay. We get that, but you need to go to the meetings. You have to go. You have to go. Maybe you can miss one every couple weeks. That's fine.
What about yard work on Sunday? No go?
No, you can do whatever you want.
Oh,
on
that's
Sunday.
different. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, with Mormonism, like it's supposed to be like a holy day. Not you're supposed to pray all day, though. Some Mormons do take it to that extreme. Like they're only going to tell scripture stories all day. Like they don't even watch TV. TV stays off. I mentioned the Disney movies because a lot of families do that. It's like my family, there was no rated R movies on Sunday. We tried to keep it PG or like light PG-13 type thing, nothing too intense. But
So you were allowed rated R movies before then?
No, my family was like, they call them like Jack Mormons a little bit. Like they went every Sunday, but like my parents would watch some rated R movies. So like growing up, me and my brothers and my siblings, we were allowed to watch R-rated movies if they were historically significant. So like Saving Private Ryan or like we kind of like copped Last of the Mohicans because that's like, oh, the French and Indian War. Yeah. That was not Mormonism though. That was my parents. That was the house I grew up in.
Yeah. Okay. We were discouraged from watching R-rated movies. For the longest time, my mom would not allow an R-rated movie. In fact, she blocked MTV. So she went through the TV and blocked it. We weren't allowed to watch MTV growing up.
We couldn't watch Simpsons.
VH1 was
that
okay
the same
though.
for y'all?
To what?
My parents like Mormonism. Hell no on The Simpsons.
Oh no, I could watch The Simpsons.
Yeah, no, that was
Not
big.
Beavis and Butthead.
My parents wouldn't let me watch Ren and Stimpy or Rocko's Modern Life for whatever reason.
My mom didn't like Ren and Stimpy, and I never understood why.
It's weird as shit.
And then I watched it as an adult. I'm like, I totally see what she's talking about. Yeah, I wouldn't let my kids watch it either.
Well, it was written by a pedophile. Wasn't that dude convicted?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, so I guess that made sense, but in hindsight. But yeah, yard work was a big one. You're not supposed to do any yard work on Sunday. And that, I don't know if the church ever said that, but that was just one of those things.
Yeah.
So we'd use the term, the ox is in the mire. So I grew up on like a 40-acre ranch. And sometimes like if it was our day for irrigation, we'd be out in the ditch pulling weeds so that the water would flow down. And that was like, oh, well, the ox is in the mire. And so we have to work on Sunday. But otherwise we wouldn't. I grew up in Arizona until I was 10. We had a swimming pool. So, you know, all the families in the world, like most people would swim on Sundays, but my wife's family, that was a big no-no. Like you do not swim on Sunday. Like that's disrespectful. They had different things like that. I don't think they watched TV on Sundays either because it took away from family time.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
it's just, it's cultural. Yeah. It's what level of faith really.
No, we didn't have any restrictions like that. There wasn't, Sunday's a holy day. Don't go do anything. No, people, what we did a lot of on Sundays is you'd go to the meeting in the morning, right? And then somebody would organize a get together where we rent like a community center or something, and everybody'd show up there and hang out.
See, and I would say in Mormonism, that probably wouldn't be acceptable.
Really? Oh,
like
we did it all the time.
Family day, maybe a family from the ward.
It'd be the whole congregation would show up.
Yeah, no.
We'd all be just hanging out doing.
That's a Saturday or a Friday night activity. That's not on the Lord's Day, bro. It's interesting hearing all this because you guys didn't celebrate holidays. You guys were a weird cult,
right?
But like we weren't allowed to do all this shit on Sunday and in general. But we don't view ourselves as a cult.
Yeah.
So I looked up that because we've thrown that word around quite a bit.
Which one?
What?
Cult.
Yeah, go ahead.
So just throwing that out there, relatively small group of people having beliefs or practices, especially relating to religion, that are regarded by others as strange or sinister or imposing excessive control over members.
So we checked every box except for
the small group. Yeah.
Does that make it worse?
I think anybody can claim something's a cult.
I mean, you could say a vegetarian is a cult.
I would say vegans are cults.
Yeah.
No, that's
straight
a cult.
edge. Straight edge.
That wasn't a thing down here.
That was big.
Straight edge? Oh, dude, I knew a lot of straight edge guys.
Because that was a spin-off from Mormonism.
That was not a
was
thing.
it really?
No, not really, but it was easy for Mormons to be straight edge because it's just like taking that
You didn't grow up in
sexual
the
purity to another
punk
level.
culture, though, did you?
No.
Okay, yeah.
No,
So I
okay,
did.
so-
Yeah.
So explain straight edge, because there's probably people that are going, what in the hell are they
Straight
talking
edge,
about?
or they didn't do drugs.
They'd beat the shit out of people. Like they would literally drive around on Friday night, and if they saw some dude drinking a beer on the side of the road, they would jump out and kick the fuck out of him.
Yeah.
Like legitimately.
X's on their hands? Was it the X's?
Yeah.
Put X's on their
Sometimes they
hands?
tattoo the inside of their lips with an X instead.
Yeah.
Big old X on their back.
I never
whatever.
understood them, but whatever. More power to them, I guess.
I know some of it was like no sex.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but they would have like oral. So I had buddies that did it. They
So it was
were only
like-
allowed to have oral sex with their girlfriends.
These are punk rockers that believed in had a weird morality code.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
Yeah. No, it is strange because, like I said, they would drive around and just beat the crap out of people for doing things that, smoking a cigarette, like almost like
I
an
never
introduction
understood
to a gang. But I mean, they had straight edge gangs in Utah. Like that was a thing. Southern California and Utah was a big thing.
Yeah.
But it's that purity.
Yeah.
I think I was probably mid-20s before I ever heard that term.
Really?
Straight
How
edge,
old
yeah.
are you? You're older than me, aren't you?
39. I'm 39.
Yeah, 5 years older. Okay.
Yeah.
When I was like 15, that was a big.
The most rebellious thing I did growing up as a witness was punk rock, so I was real into it.
What bands? I think we talked about this last time. Did you do Bad Religion?
Bad Religion.
Guttermouth? That was
I never
super
really
punk rock,
liked.
bro.
I
They
never liked
sucked.
Guttermouth. Yeah,
I listened to them. They were horrible.
Big Wig, Strung Out, still my favorite band.
Right, like Green Day, Blink,
Green Day,
Sum 41.
Blank, yes.
Okay.
Not Sum 41. They're fucking losers.
They're still punk rock, bro.
I know that guy's a drunk.
Offspring?
Yeah. Oh fuck yes. Yeah.
Offspring. I just
for
saw
sure.
them in concert.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh god, that would have been
Sum
awesome.
41 opened for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, I love the Offspring. Rancid, no, Operation
Rancid's
Ivy.
good, dude.
I was really into ska, dude. I still do. I love
Real
ska.
Big Fish?
Yes.
Mighty Mighty Bosstones?
Yes.
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 In your language.
Nerds.
Yes.
Nerds.
There's a new one. They're not really new, but the front woman is the front man is a woman. The Interrupters. They sound a lot like Rancid. They're pretty great. I love them.
Man, that Rancid. So did you do Transplants at all then?
Yes.
Because that was the lead singer from Rancid.
Yes.
And then Boxcar Racer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Glad we could bond over this.
Yeah.
Yeah, punk rock because of the language. So my parents had a rule that if it had the explicit content warning on the front, we couldn't listen to it. So we would buy the CDs and then we would throw that part out or rip the page off and act like it was an accident. We didn't know what happened to it.
Yeah.
Because like Sum 41 would say like the F word one time on like 2 different songs, but it had that warning on it.
Yeah.
And so like that was big no in my house, but we did it anyways because we were punk rock, bro.
Yeah. If they said it once, they had to put the explicit warning on there.
It's like, thanks a lot, guys. One time. Yeah. I can't have this in my house. I have to hide it from my parents. And if they find it, I'm going to get my ass kicked.
And I also like the poppy shit, like the Ataris and NoFX and
Okay. The Killers
yeah.
then?
Yeah.
That type of stuff?
Yeah.
I like the Killers.
Yeah. That was my jam.
All right, bringing this back. Sorry.
Bringing
we
it
went
back.
from holidays to punk rock.
We did. So just something, would you say, something I've kind of thought, I don't know where I picked this idea up, but Mormons kind of staying within the Mormon church. Did we talk about this last time? Kind of like staying within the Mormon church. So your house is roofed. Well, here's a roofer that's
Mormon.
that's Mormon. He's going to charge me $500 more. Did we talk about this last time? Or
No, but
he's going to charge me $500 more, but then this guy that's not a Mormon, but he's a Mormon.
100% in Mormon, like, and that's more cultural. Like the church doesn't necessarily endorse that, though I can pretty much guarantee it. A prophet or an apostle was like, you guys should support each other in your endeavors.
Well, to be fair, I think that's awesome. But I was just curious.
Yeah, but you think the dude would give you a break since you're a Mormon. J-Dubs would like try to give you a little bit of a break.
Mormons are super cheap. So a lot of times, like Mormon to Mormon dealings, like they expect a cheaper price. So you're actually like, you're doing them a favor, but it's also to your detriment. It's like when I would sell pest control door to door, when I would come out to Texas just for the summers and knock doors. Like if I met another Mormon, I knew I was going to have to do it for cheaper, but I would get them to sign up 100% because I'm Mormon. And I could be like, the owner of this company is also Mormon. So like it was a guaranteed sale. It was just going to be a shitty ass contract.
How'd you do? You guys got your secret handshake? Hey, ooh, ah, ooh, ah,
Ooh,
ooh,
no.
ah.
Big no outside of the temple.
Uh-huh.
So that was when I was deconstructing and leaving the church, because a lot of the prophets are Masons and the grips are the same. So there were like pictures of the prophets doing the grips with like the Pope or whoever.
Really?
And it like, I was so offended by that because I felt betrayed, not because I believed in Mormonism anymore, but because we were told it was so sacred and so holy and we don't talk about it outside of the temple. And like, for me, I don't give a shit if you're a Mason and the Mormon prophet. The fact that it's the same and you believe it in the prophet, like if you're doing that in public, like there's no excuse for it
Right.
because of what we are told in the temple. So kind of like you refuse to talk about the Masonic stuff, which I understand. I can respect it. I think it's funny to joke about it to make you uncomfortable, but I can respect it because you made certain promises. Now, like I said, we're just seeing a Mormon prophet do that or apostles doing that with like members of other faiths, but the justification is because they're Masons. Like that, to me, it doesn't jive.
Yeah. I don't know if you see a lot down here of Masons that are in Texas. So Masonry kind of takes on different structures in different states. And in Texas, I don't know that you would see a lot of, it has been my experience that you wouldn't see a lot of Mormons also Masons.
Okay. Interesting. I don't know, because the Masonic stuff more came to light to me when I was doing my deconstructing.
Okay. Well, and I should say that's only my personal, what I have
Yeah.
saw. I can't.
How many
I don't
different
know.
lodges have you been to, though?
So anyway, back to
That's what I'm saying.
Well, no, but we talked about this last time, how Mormons weren't allowed to start a, whatever you guys call it, like a chapter or a hall or whatever for until like really recently, I think, because Joseph Smith like hijacked all the secrets,
yeah.
claimed
Well,
they were sacred and took them back.
And to be fair, it's different everywhere. I don't know that you have many new ones in Texas being there. All the ones that are there, Masonic lodges.
Lodges,
They're
that's the term.
they're established already.
Yeah, there's probably one in every county.
Yeah, at least one in every county. So,
But like Utah was not. Like you never see them there. But I think that's why, because they refuse to allow Mormons to open lodges. And I don't know the structure of opening a lodge, but
I always heard it was the other way around. It was all the other way around. Yeah.
that Mormons wouldn't do it because it was the same.
Yeah, because a lot of people were like, "Yeah, you can't do that," because then you'd see how so much of the stuff that's the same. I don't know that that's true. That's just what I've heard. Different, just like you're not going to see a lot of Catholics that are Masons either.
I think you would have to have a very nuanced view to be both.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, like to be able to, the mental gymnastics to say the one is holy and the other one is, what term do you guys use?
Fraternity.
Yeah, it's not
but
it's
like,
not
what
a
do you
religious
refer to
thing.
it as? Because it's not religious. So what do you?
It's a
not
fraternity.
Fraternity.
It's
It's a
secret?
fraternity.
Do you call it? Because Mormons would call it sacred. What do you guys call it?
It
though?
is secret, but it's not a religious
right.
thing.
Offers,
It's not a religion. Yeah.
So do you guys call them secrets then? Like the secret handshake or the secret whatever. You don't divulge it. So what do you refer to it as? Because it's not sacred. It's not religious. So what do you call it? Secret?
Probably so. Yeah.
Or do you just never?
I
Never
just don't
comes
know
up?
that it's ever
I don't
talked
know.
about
Yeah.
in that sense.
Yeah.
It's just a known. You don't talk about it.
Well, I don't.
I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable.
No, I'm trying to
just
think of
curious.
how
I'm
it
trying to
would
remember
be.
how they would have.
Like if
And
your
it would-
wife's like, "What did you talk about today?" You'd say, "Well, I can't talk about it because it's secret," or you just say, "I don't talk about it."
Well, I just say, don't talk. Yeah, like when I initially said it, like, hey, I'm going to go do this.
Okay.
And it is what it is, and you trust that I'm not doing something bad. Because you know
That
me.
says a lot about your wife, honestly,
She's a good woman.
in a good way, like that she trusts you.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and
She's a better person than he is for sure.
I've met her, Ashley. She's solid. She's good people.
yeah, it's just a lot of dudes don't do that because of that. So they wouldn't go through,
Because they don't want to have to lie to their wife,
or their
not.
wife wouldn't like,
It's
hey,
like
you're not.
a sin of omission. You're just leaving it out, so it's like a bad thing just because you're not telling her.
What's the deal they came up with? What is it called? The Masonic thing for women. What's it called? I can't remember.
Eastern Star, yeah.
Eastern Star. Yeah, they had to come up with that because the wives wouldn't shut up.
Do you? Maybe not your wife, but like, do some of the wives be like, "He's a fucking idiot. He's just out with his stupid ass friends and their dumb ass robes." And they play Boy Scouts. Like, I don't know what they're doing. It's just dumb.
I'm sure. Sure. And then, or some that are like, I don't care. I don't, whatever.
I mean, you could use the Googles, bro. I don't know if YouTube's probably got some shit on there. One of these days, I want to do some deep diving into it.
You should. So it's cool.
I mean,
It's
unique.
it's a very interesting organization. It's not one I don't think
The
I don't feel
influence
like I
it
should.
had on this country, like the
Yeah.
structure, the founding
for sure,
fathers,
yeah.
like that fascinates
Just
me.
the design of Washington D.C. It was all laid out according to Masonic principles. In fact, if you
lot
go
of major
if you
cities,
go to a lot of
honestly.
these old county courthouses and you look at them, you can if you know what you're looking for.
The symbols.
You can see a lot of
Mormonism has a lot of the same
yeah.
symbols.
You can see a
The
lot
sun
of
and the
Masonic.
moon, stars.
I used to go to
compass,
the courthouse in
square.
Granbury and look around, and you could see, it's
Probably
all in
over
there
the
if you know what
Fort
you're
Worth
looking
one,
for.
I bet. Okay.
Yeah,
I dig it. I mean, it's kind of cool.
it's a
little
cool group.
fucked
I don't
up,
feel
but
like I would be. I could never be active in it again just because of my religious beliefs now. So
or lack thereof.
lack thereof, yeah, it would be dishonest.
It's like, dude, I don't even believe in God. How can I believe in your little?
Well, you have to
together
believe in God to be a Mason.
Oh, that's right. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I don't want to be dishonest with it.
So
I have some
We made
morality.
JD sufficiently uncomfortable. Let's move on.
You know what? If he's not uncomfortable around me, then something's wrong.
this is true. I'm uncomfortable a lot of the times. So, man, I think we have hit it. Oh, because we kind of I
There's
had
so
some
much
wrote
more,
down,
but
but we
We
I
covered
know-
the topics for today.
yeah.
What did you say?
I said I had something wrote down, but I'm sitting here thinking about it. I just didn't scratch it off my list there.
What is that?
Well, you already kind of talked about the polygamy thing. We've talked about that. That
Little
was
bit.
that was something
Yeah, a
on
little
there.
bit.
I mean,
So I did a couple podcasts, not me being on them, just listening to them about polygamy recently. So 1890s, Utah, I think it was 1890, actually the year, Utah wanted to become a state.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, no, not with that polygamy, bro.
yeah.
Y'all have been kicking back on that. We ain't doing it. So the church came out with the official proclamation, 1890, ending polygamy. So a lot of that was the church leaders. Some of them had already gone to jail, and the rest of the apostles and stuff were essentially on the run. They were
Yeah.
like in hiding, like a Warren Jeffs situation almost in a way. But the statehood was a big one because Mormons thought, if we have representation in Washington, like, hey, we can get our own senators or whatever elected, and then we can swing our dicks in Congress or whatever. So they rescinded polygamy. Okay. Turns out that was just a surface thing. So when you grow up in the church, they're like, oh, polygamy ended in 1890. And they don't tell you that for the next 20 years, polygamy was practiced in secret. So they were still performing the sealings to multiple wives for another 15 to 20 years. And then they had a bunch of court hearings. There was a guy that got elected, I think, Congress. They had like a congressional hearing over it, trying to get them to admit that they were actually still practicing polygamy and that other document, the proclamation, was just bullshit. So they would go out off the coast of California, essentially into like international waters, and perform it there because they're not performing it on American soil.
Here,
They would go to Mexico and do the sealings down there and then just move
Mexico
back
didn't
to
give a
Utah.
shit.
Say it again.
Because Mexico didn't give a shit about that.
I mean, whatever. They
They
didn't
really-
matter.
they
It
don't
wasn't
give a shit
America.
now still,
Mormons
so.
didn't care, dude. They don't give a shit. They're the chosen people. Like the Mexicans are the Lamanites, bro. They're not. They have the dark skin curse. God cursed them. So that was a shock to me deconstructing.
wait, you need that was sarcasm right there. What you said.
No,
That-
that's
I know.
what
In your, it's not your belief. That's what.
hell
That's what we're just making sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
that was one of those. So when I was in it and growing up, because when you're part of the elect/elite group, it's okay to shit on everybody else for the most part, right?
Sure.
Some people actually have a bigger conscience and didn't agree with that. But for the most part, when you're in it, because you believe that you were more obedient in the pre-existence, and that's why you were born into the church or were able to convert to the church. That's why
born
you
white.
have white skin, because you were a firmer believer in the pre-existence.
That's so fucked up.
So there's a couple of philosophies in the church as to why African-American skin were blacks. We kind of touched on that last time with Cain, curse of Cain.
Yep.
And then with Noah, there was the flood that killed everybody. But because, was it Ham viewed Moses' drunken nakedness, which is also funny because Mormons don't drink, but Moses got shit-faced.
No. That was Noah. No.
It was
Abraham.
Noah. Noah was the flood.
Yeah, but he
So I
didn't.
think Ham was his son that he was kind of the disobedient son that looked on his
Abraham.
nakedness.
God damn it. I can't remember. I know
Noah
it
was
wasn't. It
after
wasn't
Abraham.
Moses because Moses didn't have kids.
Was Noah. So Noah's son saw his nakedness. He looked on his father's drunkenness, and so he was cursed with dark skin. So that's how Cain's curse was brought back. So there were a couple beliefs in Mormonism. They call it like deep doctrine beliefs, where like a third of the host of heaven, right, went with Satan. But then there's also the belief that like another third didn't pick a side, and that people that didn't pick a side were cursed with dark skin, and that's why they came to this earth with dark skin, was because they weren't obedient in the pre-existence.
The pre-existence thing, where does that, how is that? Is that one of the Mormon books that the pre-existence thing is? Is there some
It's a doctrinal Mormon belief. I don't know if the Bible talks about it. Like you can find anything in the Bible. First of all, I'm going to say that.
Sure, you can bend it to say whatever you want.
But that's a Mormon belief because like Joseph Smith had to have an answer for everything, which being in the church or leaving the church now, like modern day prophets are like, we don't know if there's a heavenly mother. There probably is. We don't talk about her. But like in Joseph Smith's time, if you asked him like how many teeth God had, he'd be like, bro, let me go pray about it. I'll get you an answer. So he had an answer for everything. So I think part of that flowed. So pre-existence, everybody was in the presence of, and we talked about this last time. Everybody's in the presence of God. Satan comes up with his plan. We're going to come to earth and get bodies, but we're going to force everybody to do what we're supposed to do. And then Christ's plan was we're going to come here and, be tested and see if we're going to choose good or evil. And, everybody went with, or at least a third of the host of heaven went with God's plan. A third went with Satan's plan. Whatever the other third might have gotten a little mixed up in there. So pre-existence is just where we were before we were on this life.
Seemed like, I just kind of did a quick search. It seems like this all comes out of the Pearl of Great Price.
Okay, there you go. Yeah, that's
The
strictly
idea for
Mormon
that.
scripture then.
So you had a question earlier. We didn't get back to it about the Jehovah's Witness, the J-Dubs church. You were going to...
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
The windows.
It's just cheaper.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, it's just cheaper.
Like, what's up? No windows?
Yeah, then
They don't
typically
do
have
windows in their churches, bro. Like it's really rare to see a kingdom hall with windows.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people outside of their church think that that's like a weird, that it's because when the second coming happens, the glass isn't going to get blown out and you guys can all huddle in there and be safe. But then if you actually ask a Jehovah's Witness, it's just a cost-saving measure.
It's a cost-saving measure, yeah. For electricity and everything else.
So speculation was always that, they believed when the second coming happened that they would be safer in there with no windows. Maybe it was like the Passover, right? Like the blood over the doorframe. You guys don't have windows.
There are
so
some Kingdom halls with windows, but generally,
and I have seen that, yeah.
Yeah, generally they don't build them just because it saves money on glass, saves money on air conditioning. And security itself is better too.
They seem like super frugal people.
They are, yeah.
That's good though.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the Kingdom halls are all built by volunteers, so yeah.
Interesting.
Pretty great.
No building codes for churches. Did you know that? That's probably why they can do no windows.
I don't think a window is required in a building code.
Fire escape.
Fire escape. Yeah, fire escape.
They have fire escapes.
Okay, so there's
have like two though, right? Like
Yeah,
even
per
bedrooms
room.
and houses have to
Have
have two
to
ways
have-
to get out.
yeah.
Door
There
and
are-
a window.
There are multiple fire escapes in a Kingdom hall. I'm just telling you.
Oh, I'm just saying. Well, in general, and look that up because I'm pretty sure that
I'm not
a
looking
lot
up
of
building codes.
Just a
don't
cesspool, government cesspool.
exactly. Yeah.
I draw the line on building codes. I'm not doing it. That seems really boring.
But yeah, so they call it post manifesto polygamy. Coming back to that.
Okay.
So the church came out, no more polygamy. And then they actually practiced it for another 15 to 20 years, which I think is bullshit. So the general rank and file members of the church thought that polygamy was done. But a lot of the higher ups in the church were still being sealed to women. They were performing these sealings for their friends, things like that. And I'm like, that's just bullshit, bro. Don't freaking say.
I don't understand.
It's
here's my thing. I've never understood why polygamy is looked down upon. Because in the Old Testament, if you read it, these dudes had multiple wives, they had concubines, and a concubine was nothing but a sex slave, basically.
But it was more concubines, not wives. That's the thing is even Abraham,
King Solomon had 2,000 wives and concubines.
Okay.
David had hundreds of wives and concubines.
Yeah, but David fell from grace too.
Well, everybody does. So there you go.
Just an on-side observation.
I'm just saying.
Once again, you can find anything you want in the scriptures.
I know. I'm just saying the reaction to the idea of polygamy is kind of, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense because it's a very biblical practice.
So what you see with, modern day, right?
Yeah.
Is these guys get a little greedy, I think, David Koresh,
Yeah.
Joseph Smith. They get a little full of their power. They see the influence they have over other people and they want to push that as far as they can.
I understand that, but if it was a normal thing in society, I don't think you'd see that. Like you see that in Muslim countries, they have multiple wives.
I think informed consent, my issue with polygamy is the control over the women.
Yeah.
Because with Muslim countries, they can't even show their faces outside.
I know, it's a great system. They got to figure it out.
But with polygamy,
If you look at the downward spiral of this country, it started with giving women the right to speak.
Speak.
Wow.
Do they ever not have the right to speak? But
No,
Send the hate mail to the way it should be.
I think polygamy, if you look at some of the Mormon stuff, the polygamy in Utah and you look at those were hard times, right? Who's going to go out and fight a battle? It's going to be a guy. There may be kind of practical use or practical reasons for polygamy in some of those times, not as a whole across the board.
No, and the only reason I'm smiling is because that was the excuse that church leaders they make now, like church apologists. They're like, oh, well, there were less women or less men than women, so it made sense. But if you look, because the church tracks everything, if you look at church membership, there was actually more men than women. But yet the people getting multiple wives are the people in power and positions of authority in the church.
Yeah. Well, the whole Warren Jeffs things when he was doing that, and then all of a sudden they're running out young men.
None of the young men have women to marry.
And they're running out. But I guess, and maybe I was wrong on that. But I could see, I don't see how that's a forever solution. But if you're in a town and, or if you're in a group and in the middle of Utah and nothing around you and you get raided by Indians and several men, it makes sense to me in certain situations. I would never want to partake. I don't get it. I don't want any part of it. But I guess could see the potential back in the day. What gets me is exactly what you said is inevitably will be used for control and for, just all kinds of bad shit that goes along with it.
Well, think about this, even what you said, right? Like, so the Old West settlers are spread out. This lady's husband died. It's like, okay, well, I can't take you back to the town for 2 months. So the solution is I'm going to feed you. And because I'm going to feed you, I get to fuck you. And I can't do that because I'm Christian. So I'm just going to marry you so that then I can do it.
It sounds like a good trade, really.
Consenting adults is one thing, right? But like even your reasoning doesn't logically make sense. Like if it's consensual and it's not used to control, right? But religion's all about control predominantly, okay? Any religion, a lot of it's about control. Whether it's so you'll pay me money or so I can dictate your life, whatever it is, control, okay? But that's how I view polygamy as well. Because otherwise it would just be an open relationship. There would no need to actually be married. You're just in an open relationship. And I have buddies that do that, like, or whatever. Like they have an open relationship with their spouse and they both sleep with other people. And some people have like, I have to sign off on who you sleep with. And others, it's like, I don't really give a shit. Just don't bring anything home. So consenting adults is one thing. But I just feel like people that want multiple wives, like, why do you have to be married to that person? Like, I just feel like that's just an exercise in control because the government's not going to recognize your second wife. And all you're doing is creating more headaches for yourself. Like you could just sleep with that person if your wife's okay with it and they could live in your house, whatever.
Yeah. But if you marry them, it, I guess, gives you some kind of legitimacy, I guess.
I mean, you could even say
you're not committing adultery because you're married.
Marriage is a religious construct in and of itself and a government construct, right?
Yeah. I mean, at the core of it, marriage is a property transaction.
Because you could just promise to be loyal to that person and whatever.
Yeah.
Like, but originally I think the church had to sign off on it, whether you had to pay a fee or get the pastor's approval or the Catholic priest's approval to get married, Church of England, whatever. And that's just trickled down into government because a lot of governments are Christian based essentially. Or it's you want to get married, you can pay me $100 fee, and then we'll recognize it and we'll allow you to keep some more of your money via tax breaks. It's just nonsense.
Yeah.
Loyalty to another person is important, 100%. Like the ideas of marriage, but like the anarchist in me just views marriage itself as control through religion and government.
Yeah.
Loyal to my wife, 100%. Don't want anything to do with anything else, but I just, brass tacks, it's, if you really get into it, it's just religious control and government control if you're not religious. Yep. Let's do a third episode.
Let's do it.
We're gonna have
There's so many topics within the church stuff that I would be curious also with Jehovah's Witness perspective, but we had some great topics we covered today.
Yeah, this is a good one.
We at some point need to do one. We've talked about it, and it'd be good to have you on here. Just kind of some of the libertarian kind of ideology, ANCAP kind of stuff. Do some of that stuff too.
That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would be.
Do we talk a little bit of that with Mormonism as well? We tied that in. Mormons are preppers, a lot of them.
Yeah, we did talk about that one last time.
But yeah, the libertarian shit, absolutely, bro.
Yeah.
Every time. Absolutely. I'm more anarchist now, but that's okay.
Good on you, buddy.
I just want to.
That's what they say. What's that? What's that thing? What's
the same? What's the difference between a libertarian and a
anarchist? 6 months.
Yeah, 6 months. Yeah. So
it's just a logical conclusion to libertarianism.
You're not a real libertarian if you're not an anarchist.
Too much. That's the way I look at it.
Why not? It makes sense. Like I said, if you actually are reading the books and studying, it's the logical conclusion. I'm sorry if that's shitting on you, JD. I don't know where you're at with that, but
no, I am there with that.
Okay,
Yeah.
my man.
I am there. Probably 6 months ago, I wasn't. So
No, he wasn't. He wasn't for sure.
no. But anyway, thanks for coming on. Thanks for doing it again.
Yeah, thanks, man.
We'll
Always
do
a
it.
pleasure.
We'll
Thank
do
you,
it
guys.
again next time.
All right, see ya.